So Bill and I both did our students.
Tomorrow is the day we honor and celebrate the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He is worthy of such celebration, and we know that the victories of the civil rights movement happened because of hundreds of thousands of people who showed up to march and boycott and organize and take care of each other. So if I was in charge of the universe, tomorrow would be hundreds of thousands of people who participated in the civil rights movement day, but I'm not. And so I have my own little pulpit, literally, where I can help us remember the stories of some of the other people who gave their time and energy, devotion, and lives for for the civil rights movement, for the dream of equality and justice for all. And so today we are remembering and honoring the Reverend James Reeb, who was a civil rights martyr and a Unitarian Universalist minister who died in racist violence while participating in the Selma voting rights campaign. So as we move into this time together, let us remember everyone who participates and know that you don't need to be the leader of a movement to have an impact. The lessons of that movement seem so much truer this week, this month, this year. So let us take these lessons from our good ancestors and carry them forward. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Bob Davis, a member of the Sunday Services Committee. I'm here to remind you People's Church is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Here we strive to be a welcoming community for all, embracing and serving our diverse world. Here we welcome everyone, no matter who your ancestors are, what pronouns you use, who you love, where you are on your spiritual or ethical or religious journey. We only ask that you come with an open mind and a warm heart as we explore what it means to be human in this somewhat divisive, sometimes diverse world. Here we try to use all of the knowledge that is available to us, whether it be science or literature, religion, philosophy, or the arts. Here, questions are as important as answers, and our answers get revised as new knowledge becomes available to us or as situations change. Today, as Reverend Rachel mentioned, we're honoring one of the martyrs of the Civil Rights Unit, which occurred 61 years ago, I believe. And who would have thought that we're still facing some of the same issues today? And so, welcome to everyone here today. And now, Reverend Rachel has some announcements.
Some things to know that are unfolding in our community as we begin today. Our mindfulness class continues after the service. That's at 12:15 in the Buddha room. Next Saturday night is a game night here in this room, sponsored by the Religious Education Committee for people of all ages. Bring a dish to share and a favorite game and have some fun together. Our auction is coming up, and I have been tasked with getting you all excited to donate things or services. And so I am just putting out into the universe things I want in hopes that you will offer them. So I'm looking at some of the people younger than me in this room and saying, I want someone to teach me how TikTok works. I will pay money for that. Maybe you run a class or something. I'm saying I want to show up to some gathering, perhaps here at the church, and like taste fancy chocolates or potato chips or something, and just rank them and enjoy them. So if somebody feels inspired by either of those, just know that I will be a bidder, maybe not the highest bidder, but at least a bidder on those items. Other great ideas, your baked goods. The baked goods always sell really well. Social events for adults, social events for children, social events for people of all ages. If you have a skill that can be taught in an hour or two, that could be a craft or building something or how to fix something, turn it into a little class, and people will pay to have you teach them how to do something. If you have a skill that you can share, donate it. One of our most bid on items last year was, I think, 4 hours of garden labor. That is not tremendously skilled thing. It takes some skill, but if you can do things, somebody was telling me yesterday they want someone to come and move rocks in their yard. If you have the ability to move rocks, your labor is valuable as a fundraiser for the church. So I encourage you, and maybe there's something else, but if there's something that you do or know that gives you joy, it will probably give someone else joy, and probably someone else will pay a little bit of money. So the idea of the auction is to have lots of different offerings and have it be a source of social connection as much as fundraising for the church. So think of a reason for people to gather, and people will gather and pay a little money for the privilege. So there's things in our online newsletter or our weekly email, there's a link to a sign-up form, or you could just write it down on a piece of paper, this is what I'm willing to do, or be in contact with Eli in the church office. But seriously, we're looking for a wide variety of things. If it's something that gives you joy, someone else will likely pay for it. And next Sunday, we're having a music service. This is a hymn sing. This is a service that was supposed to happen the Sunday after Thanksgiving, and then snow and ice and everything. So it's been waiting for you. Please come. It will be great. And now let us sing.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit to sing our first song together. Are we starting with verse 2? Yay, there we go. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river, I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean, I've got love like an ocean in my soul. Pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow, I've got pain like an arrow in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops, I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain, I've got strength like a mountain in my soul.
And will Hazel come forward and help me light the chalice today? Every week we light a chalice and take some time to reflect on its meaning. If you're lighting a chalice at home on our Zoom, please type in the chat box where you're lighting your chalice and your name. This week's words are called "We Are Called" by Derek Jackson. In these times, we are called to step into the mess and murk of life, called to be strong and vulnerable, called to console and to challenge, called to be grounded and hold lofty ideals, called to love in the face of hate. We are called, and it is not easy. And we will not always agree. And we will yell and scream and cry, and we will laugh and smile and sing. We are called to be together. There is so much work to do, and we cannot do it alone. We need one another, holding each other accountable to our covenants, to the holy, to love, and justice. In these times, we are called. And where do we have chalices lit?
In so many places, because many of us are not out on the roads this morning, which I think is such a good choice. So we have people joining us today in Paw Paw and Parkview Hills, Galesburg, on Maple Street, South Portage, Woodinville, Washington, which is actually the town I grew up in. And yeah, Libby Heine Cogswell has friends or has family there now. On Brook Drive, Millwood neighborhood, Plainwell, Eastwood, Richland, Parkview Hills, on 41st and a half Street, Oshimo, Prairie Road, Plainwell, Vicksburg, Munson Lake near Grand Junction. What a gift it is. And Edmonds, Washington. What a gift it is to have so many of us together in spirit and commitment and care, even when we are not all in one place. I would now like to invite our children forward for a conversation. I am so glad you are with us today. Yeah, be careful. It's a little bit treacherous as you walk up. There's many obstacles of bells and recorders and bowls of water for rituals. Yeah, but I think you can make it. I think you can do it. Yeah, okay. Thank you for braving the gauntlet to come forward. So, the thing I wanted to talk a little bit about today is the song we just sang that talks about peace like a river. Because I don't know about you, but I do not experience rivers as very peaceful. Right? They're like moving quickly. If you drop your shoe in, it'll go a long way down before you even have a chance to catch it. Do you guys ever think of rivers like that? Or do you think of them as being peaceful?
I think of them as being peaceful.
You think of them as peaceful? Okay. I think of them as kind of chaotic.
A large rushing river I find not calming, but a small quiet creek, that.
A small quiet creek?
Oh, like a brook.
Like a brook, okay. But even a brook or even a small rushing river often has things happening under the surface, right? And so part of this song is about looking calm on the surface while something might be happening where someone can't see. Right? This is what I've learned about this song because I had questions and started doing some research and talking to some people. So it's looking like a calm on the surface when something is happening underneath the surface. So one of the examples I think of is like when you're planning a surprise party for someone, you wouldn't want the person to know. So you have to be kind of calm on the surface while you're maybe excited beneath the surface. Right? Yeah. Can you guys think of any other examples of when you might need to be calm on the surface and something else underneath? Yeah?
I have a play in February, and it has to free Ted to be exhorted for like an hour.
Oh, so you are in a play where you're going to have to pretend to be a sardine on the surface, but you're not actually a sardine underneath. Okay, yeah, that's a really good example. What about you?
When you're waiting for something and you have to wait patiently, like when I'm just sitting around at home playing, waiting for 6 o'clock, I would have to wait, and it takes forever.
Yeah, when you're waiting, and so you have to look like you're calm and patient, even when you're not feeling calm and patient in your body. What about you?
Same with me, but just a snowflake, not a sardine.
Oh yeah, you're doing a play where you're a snowflake. So you have to pretend that you're a snowflake, but under the surface, you are yourself. That's a really good examples, you guys. Do you have another idea?
I have a play at home that I'm going to do, and I'm going to be a vampire, but I'm not actually a vampire.
Oh, there's so many drama kids here. Someone's going to be a vampire in a play and is not actually a vampire underneath the surface. I love that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more.
I'm going to be a princess.
Oh, and you'll be a princess, and you're not really a princess? Mm-hmm. Okay, yes. So this song is about that, and it started a long time ago in our country, and this song was created by communities of enslaved people. So black people who were held in slavery by white people. And they had to sometimes look calm on the surface, but maybe they were making plans beneath the surface. Plans to be in community together, plans to find freedom, all sorts of plans. And so when I think of this song now, it helps me connect to communities of people trying to get free and think about maybe what my job is to help other people and myself be a little more free. So that's why I wanted to talk about this song, so we could all know a little bit more about what it means when we sing we have peace like a river. It means we're peaceful on the front and on our surface, but maybe we're making big plans for something else underneath. Okay? Thank you all so much. And now we are going to sing again and sing you off to classes and learning and growing together. Thank you so much.
Birth in peace, in search of wisdom, with love to guide you on your way. And may the joy of life surround you wherever you may go. Go forth in peace, in search of wisdom, with love to guide you on your way. And may the joy of life surround you wherever you may go.
People's people are generous people. One of the ways we are generous is once a month or so, we send our offering that we collect during our service out into the world to do good and important work in our community.
The offering will now be received. Please be generous. Please join me in reciting our words of thanks. The words are on the screen and in the order of service. From the countless gifts we each have been given, gifts of life and love and sustenance, we bring these small portions to share in the works of love which none of us can accomplish alone.
People's Church is a community that supports one another. One of the ways we do this is when we gather, we take time for people to lift up the joys and sorrows and other milestones in their lives. I now place a few more stones for the joy and the sorrow that we're holding quietly in our hearts today, the joys and sorrows in our wider community and our wider world. Sources of reason and radiance, sources of courage and compassion, keep watch with those who work or watch or weep this day. May the suffering be soothed. May the weary find rest. May the sick be tended. May the dying and those who love them find peace. May the joyous be shielded. And may all of us know we are wrapped in a love that surrounds us always, a web that connects us to all that exists. I invite you to further settle into your space. Take a few slow, smooth breaths. Do what you can to become 10% more comfortable in your body. Maybe that's rolling your shoulders back or unclenching your jaw, or releasing your tongue from the roof of your mouth. Your eyes can be closed if you like, or you can find something pleasing for them to rest on. I invite you to bring your attention to the places where your body is touching what's beneath it. Maybe that's feet on the floor or your bottom against a chair. Notice those points of connection and support to floor, to seat, and ultimately to the earth. Feel the weight of yourself resting here. Feel the force of gravity holding you close. was recently told that gravity is proof that the earth wants you here. Feel that proof, that gentle pull, holding you close. Now, I invite you to think about your good ancestors. Call them to mind. These might not be biological relatives, though they could be. Think of the people who have positively formed you into who you are. Friends, mentors, teachers. Those who inspire you, who you have never met. Holy exemplars. Those who taught you through the page, or the stage, or the art, or the screen. Bring a few faces to mind if you haven't yet, and greet them with gratitude. Now, I invite you to envision these good ancestors behind you. Maybe placing a gentle hand on your back, maybe as a gentle breeze pushing you forward. Not forcefully, but alongside you, witnessing and encouraging. Know that these good ancestors can be with you whenever you call them to mind, whenever you choose to. In a moment, we will sing, and as we transition out of this guided meditation, I want you to remember and to know that these practices, the practices of noticing gravity and remembering that the earth wants you here, practices of remembering good ancestors are with you. If these are helpful to you, you can carry them with you and turn to them when you need them. They are as close as your own body and your own memory.
There is a love, oh, once more all together. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
Our first reading today is from a book, The Martyrs. In May 1964, Jim Reeb applied to become the director of a housing desegregation effort in Boston. As part of his application, he was asked to answer the question, "What do you consider to be the most important values in life?" And this was his response. People. I consider people to be more important than anything else in life. Therefore, I enjoy working with people more than anything else. Whatever relates to the improvements of the conditions under which people live, and therefore creates greater opportunities for fruitful human relationships, is of concern to me. Nothing gives me more satisfaction than encouraging the mutual understanding and faith that makes some worthy enterprise possible. Religion. Religion has been important to me as long as I can remember. By my senior year in high school, I recognized a clear inner call to the ministry. The interpersonal subjective experience of God was always very important to me. In the course of my development, I finally became a humanist. However, I am still oriented around my inner sense of rightness and seek to follow my own intuition. This is why I feel entirely in sympathy with the Friends' approach to religion, even though I consider myself a humanist, as I understand some friends do. Psychiatry. My interest in psychiatry, developed initially during seminary, was aroused because it opened many doors to my own self-understanding and the genuine acceptance of other people. My interest has continued for these same reasons, as well as a desire to broaden my understanding of the psychology of the religious experience. Freedom. I left the Presbyterian ministry because my pursuit of truth and understanding could not be contrived. I wanted to minister to people's needs, but not within the context of an organization that required I sacrifice my integrity. Social justice. Since my days as a hospital chaplain, some of my deepest concerns have related to the problems of Negro people in our society. I would like to have a further opportunity to contribute to the changes that will bring them full equality in American society. But I believe that dream of justice is one of man's noblest aspirations and one which continues to grow in importance to me. The city. I think some of our major social problems are in our great urban centers. The problems of these centers are especially intriguing to me. In my work at All Souls, I have received much satisfaction from my relationship to the development of a community organization.
And our second reading today is a passage from a eulogy for the Reverend James Reeb, delivered by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on March 15th, 1965, at Brown Chapel in Selma, Alabama. Naturally, we are compelled to ask the question, who killed James Reeb? The answer is simple and rather limited when we think of the who. He was murdered by a few sick, demented, and misguided men who have this strange notion that you express dissent through murder. There is another haunting, poignant, desperate question we are forced to ask this afternoon that I asked a few days ago as we funeralized James Jackson. It is the question, what killed James Reeb? When we move from the who to the what, the blame is wide and the responsibility grows. James Reeb was murdered by the indifference of every minister of the gospel who has remained silent behind the safe security of stained glass windows. He was murdered by the irrelevancy of a church that will stand amidst social evil and serve as a tail light rather than a headlight, an echo rather than a voice. He was murdered by the irresponsibility of every politician who has moved down the path of demagoguery, who has fed his constituents the stale bread of hatred and the spoiled meat of racism. He was murdered by the brutality of every sheriff and law enforcement agent who practices lawlessness in the name of law. He was murdered by the timidity of the federal government that can spend millions of dollars a day to keep troops in South Vietnam, yet cannot protect the lives of its own citizens seeking constitutional rights. Yes, he was even murdered by the cowardice of every Negro who tacitly accepts the evil system of segregation, who stands on the sidelines in the midst of a mighty struggle for justice. So in his death, James Reeb says something to each of us, black and white alike. Says that we must substitute courage for caution. Says to us that we must be concerned not merely about who murdered him, but about the system, the way of life, the philosophy which produced the murder. His death says to us that we must work passionately, unrelentingly, to make the American dream a reality, so he did not die in vain.
They sit. No. Let's sing together. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday.
James Reeb is remembered today, when he is remembered at all, for his death and not his life. It is his martyrdom as a white minister in Selma, Alabama, during the Voting Rights Campaign that makes him noteworthy. But his life is a quiet testimony to living with integrity. You heard Bob read Reeb's statement of values a few minutes ago. He was a man who valued people, religion, psychiatry, freedom, social justice, and the city. And he lived his life according to these values long before the final heartbreaking act of his story. James Reeb was born 99 years ago this month, and he spent his childhood in Kansas and Wyoming. A notable story from his youth is that as a teenager, he recruited a Lutheran pastor to lead a sports and religion program at the local boys' club. And this was the 1940s in Wyoming, and Reeb was Presbyterian. So reaching out across denominational lines like that was so significant that people remembered it decades later. He seemed to always know he would become a clergy person, a Presbyterian clergy person at first. He studied at Princeton Theological Seminary in New Jersey, and while he was a student, he worked as a chaplain trainee at a hospital in Philadelphia. He loved that work and took a job as the Presbyterian chaplain at that hospital after graduation. Being with people on some of the worst days of their lives slowly led Reeb to question his faith. And after a time, he felt that he could no longer, with integrity, call himself a Presbyterian. So he left his work at the hospital and took a job as the youth director at a YMCA. By this time, he was married, and he and his wife started searching and found a spiritual home in Unitarianism. Reeb built friendships with Unitarian clergy and was hired as the assistant minister at All Souls Unitarian in Washington, D.C. This is still before the Unitarians and the Universalists merged. So we're in the late 50s in our timeline here. He worked to transition his ministerial fellowship from the Presbyterians to the Unitarians. And in Washington, D.C., he became deeply concerned and deeply involved in the work of fair housing and housing desegregation. His supervisor at the time said Jim was singularly dedicated to a high concern for people of all walks of life. And after a few years, James decided that he wanted to devote his entire work energy, all of his ministry, to the work of housing. So about a year before his death, he became the director of a program of the American Friends Service Committee. That's the Quakers in Boston. And this is the job that we heard part of his application for earlier. How wild is it that your job application can become a public document like this? So this program sought to empower folks in some of Boston's poorest and most segregated neighborhoods, most racially segregated, to advocate for themselves for safe and fair housing. To do this work with integrity, James and Marie Reeb decided that they needed to live in the community they served. So they were one of few white families in their neighborhood, and perhaps the only white family that could have afforded to live elsewhere, but chose to live there. They had concerns about sending their children to the local underfunded, overwhelmingly Black schools. But they recognized that to best serve their neighbors, they had to truly be alongside them. And Jim made sure that the local NAACP chapter knew they were advocating for his family too, as they pursued school desegregation in Boston. James Reeb was in the work, building relationships, speaking with local leaders, and advocating for the city to enforce housing codes. At the time, landlords' failure to maintain housing was leading to injuries and to deaths. He was documenting this and preparing a big report. Meanwhile, we are in February 1965 now. Thousands of miles away in Selma, Alabama, a mass movement was underway, seeking voting rights for Black people. There were rallies and attempts to register to vote, mostly organized by local people. And on February 26th, James Jackson, a 26-year-old Black civil rights worker from the local area, was killed by an Alabama state trooper. Dr. King mentioned him in the eulogy that I read earlier. In wake of that death, an idea came together to march from Selma to Montgomery, the state capital, to demand voting rights. And civil rights activists and local people gathered. And as they started their march, they were attacked by local and state law enforcement and others. This attack made the national news, and in the aftermath, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King sent out telegrams to religious groups across the continent. They read, "In the vicious maltreatment of defenseless citizens of Selma, where old women and young children were gassed and clubbed, we have witnessed an eruption of the disease of racism which seeks to destroy all. It is fitting that all Americans help to bear the burden. I call, therefore, join me in Selma. In this way, all America will testify that the struggle in Selma is for the survival of democracy in our land." James Reeb, like so many others, received this public invitation. We know he went to Selma, but those close to him report that it wasn't an easy choice. He talked it through with his wife, his bosses and coworkers, his minister friends. He weighed the important work he was doing. If he went, he would miss some important meetings about fair housing. And he weighed the impact it would have on his family. He asked his boss's permission to take a few days off work, and ultimately he decided to go. He thought he wouldn't be able to continue to do his work in Black communities with integrity if he said no to Dr. King's call to Selma. So he booked a ticket for that night, and after reading his children a bedtime story, he was known to be a very animated reader of bedtime stories. He headed to the airport. He joined a few minister colleagues on the plane with him. He arrived in Selma the next morning and gathered with other clergy who had come from away and with local community members. Reeb didn't know it, but civil rights leaders were in tense negotiations with state and local authorities about the planned march. There was no guarantee that people would be safe. And rather than risk a full march, the crowd of a few thousand people marched to the edge of town, prayed, and then dispersed. They would return another day. So James Reeb was preparing to head to the airport and go back home, but a minister friend convinced him to stay on for the events of the next day, and Reeb agreed. That night, James Reeb and two of his colleagues went to dinner at an integrated restaurant, and shortly after they left their meal, they were attacked by 4 white men and beaten with clubs. The attackers gave Reeb a serious and ultimately fatal head injury. He couldn't receive treatment at the local white-serving hospital because he was an out-of-town civil rights supporter and they refused to treat him. And the local Black hospital wouldn't be able to care adequately for him or anyone else with this sort of injury. So he was transported to Birmingham, and it took hours to get him there. He fell into a coma, and he died 2 days later. This death of a white clergyman shook the conscience of the nation, or at least the conscience of white folks who hadn't been involved in the civil rights movement up to that point. As Jack Mendelson, who was the Reeb family's minister after they moved to Boston, wrote, "The martyrdom of Jim Reeb produced the most widespread reaction against the doctrine of white supremacy in all the turbulent history of the civil rights movement. Here was a patently good man who had died, as Martin Luther King put it, for doing good. And what was crucially important, he was a white man, a family man, a sober and industrious man, a religious man. The combination was overwhelming in its impact on white consciences. And for the first time, seemingly, many whites could see a simple, crystal clear issue, the right to vote, and could identify through the death of a white man with the Negro cause. He continues, a surge of conviction swept the nation. President Johnson moved to give it shape and direction. On Monday evening, March 15th, 4 days after Jim Reeb's death, Johnson went before a televised joint session of Congress and spoke with unmistakable depth of feeling and commitment in the plainest possible words. It is wrong, deadly wrong, to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote. We have already waited 100 years and more, and the time for waiting is gone. We shall overcome. Within a few months, the Voting Rights Act passed, which, despite its slow dismantling by the Supreme Court over the last decade or so, has greatly worked to expand citizens' ability to vote in this country. It is a cause that James Reeb and others, including James Jackson and Viola Liuzzo, a white Unitarian Universalist woman from Detroit who went to Selma too, died for. They are martyrs to this cause. The parallels between the death of James Reeb and the death of Renee Good are impossible to ignore. I'm sure you've already drawn the connections between then and now. 60 years ago, a white man died from white supremacist violence, and it brought the attention of the nation to voting rights. 10 days ago, a white woman was killed by an immigration and customs enforcement officer, and it brought the attention of the nation to how the government is terrorizing our cities and immigrants and people who might look like immigrants. I hate that white martyrdom seems to matter more than the martyrdom of Black and brown people. The death of a Black man a few weeks before James Reeb's death did not spark the same outrage. And the death of other people in ICE custody and from ICE violence has not sparked similar outrage to Renee Good's death. This is a truth of the story that we need to sit with, too. And I'm not saying this to condemn anyone or to make us feel guilty for our reactions. As a white mom and a former resident of the Twin Cities, I see myself in Renee Good profoundly and haven't had that same reaction to other deaths caused by immigration and customs enforcement. And I know other white people have felt this way too. This is something to notice, something that I as a white person need to notice and wonder about. How far does white empathy reach? Are all of us part of the circle of care, or do we unconsciously cast some outside of it? Do we, and this we means white people, and others formed by white supremacy, create unconscious hierarchies, ranking some lives as more worthy than others? Our culture and our history tell us that white deaths are more tragic than the deaths of other folks. James Reeb's death is what led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act, and the death of James Jackson a few weeks earlier did not. So we can acknowledge these racist realities and do our work to reject those racist logics, both in our own hearts and in our wider world. There is also something in these stories of white martyrdom about the deaths being more meaningful because they are somehow selfless, a story of how James Reeb came from the north to support the Black folks in Selma out of the goodness of his heart, or a story of how Renee Good was helping others unlike herself when she was killed. And that's another racist logic to reject in this moment and always. Because the truth that our values, these values, call us to, is that racism and white supremacy hurt everyone, including white people. Racism cuts white people off from our full humanity, from our integrity, from true relationships of equality and dignity. The internalized racial superiority that racism teaches white people, that has taught me, perhaps others of you, it distorts our souls. While it is true that racism comes first and hardest and most violently for Black and brown people, everyone is victimized by it in different ways. So Reeb and Good died challenging the violent racist practices of government because they knew we are all connected and all of us get free together. As Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King wrote in his letter from a Birmingham jail, with a slight update for inclusive language that I think he would support. In a real sense, all life is interrelated. All people are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. I can never be what I ought to be until all of my siblings, of all races and all identities, are what they ought to be. This is the commitment that hundreds of thousands of good ancestors who participated in the civil rights movement gave their time to, and that civil rights martyrs gave their lives for. It is this idea, our inescapable network of mutuality, our single garment of destiny, that inspires so many now. In the memorial service for James Reeb held in Boston, his boss, John A. Sullivan, said, after summing up so many of Reeb's virtues, if Jim Reeb were writing these words, I think he might now say, well, what's the next step? Sullivan continues, once again, his life can speak to us. It says, come in out of the suburbs and revive the dying city. It says, don't flee from the sinking schools, get in them and work on them. It says, don't settle for nice houses in the suburbs and rotten houses in the ghetto. Change it through every way, community organization, legislation, code enforcement. And I think he might say, if he were here, Sullivan continues, there is a killer in the dark and racist streets of the South, but there is a killer in the North too, one which strikes Negro and white in the bright light of day every day. And the killer's name is non-involvement. It is apathy and lack of interest. It is self-concern. This is the killer James Reeb was stalking when he found him. He was going to wrap him around with righteousness and justice and love. So may we, as we add James Reeb and Renee Good and others to our good list of ancestors that we claim, may we, as we remember that we cannot be what we ought until everyone is what they ought to be. May we wrap the world around with righteousness and justice and love. May we go and do likewise. May it be so. May we make it so. And amen.
I invite you all to rise, once more embody your spirit to sing together. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. More peace. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere and more joy. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
So in his death, James Reeb says something to each of us, of all races, of all identities, says that we must substitute courage for caution, says to us that we must be concerned not merely about who murdered him, but about the systems, the way of life, the philosophy which produced the murder. His death says to us that we must work passionately, unrelentingly, to make justice a reality, so he did not die in vain. Let us go in peace and go in love.